Hi, my name is Talia. Welcome to Talia Nerds Out. I'm just doing a slew of videos. Don't know when they'll go up, but I wanted to finish my July book reviews. I didn't read as much as I hoped to in July. I've already done some of the book reviews, like Sam the Cat, and I think Sam the Cat was the main one I had done already. But I have just recorded one for Superman for All Seasons, a general overview of some of the ones that I've read, and then another more specific one that I did was Death of Mr. Dodsley. Now, I'm now doing the review for what's technically a reread, even though I didn't remember it really, which was What Matters in Jane Austen by John Mullen. And I think I heard about this book through Dr. Octavia Cox's channel. It looks like I read it, though, maybe 2 years ago first. 2 years ago? Maybe 3 years ago. It might have been 3 years ago. I don't think it was as much as 4. It was quite a while ago that I read this last. It was either 2022 or 2021. So it actually was 3 or 4 years ago since I last read this. Didn't remember it very well. I read it on Kindle. I feel like I appreciated it a lot more this time. I'm not sure if it was because I read it physically or if I was just in more of a place to really get more out of it, because I had read Austen a lot more at this point. I think I was still fairly new to Austen when I read this particular book last time. But I think what brought it back to my mind again was I watched fairly recently, I guess, another Dr. Octavia Cox video. And she was doing a video on and let me bring up the chapter. She was doing a video specifically on trying to get to, it was Captain, well, I wasn't able to find the name I was looking for, but I think Dr. Octavia Cox was doing a video on Mr. Elliot's friend, the one whose wife was going to have a baby, but who came up a couple of times, kind of like was brought up in conversation to vouch for Mr. Elliot. Well, she referenced a chapter in this book that was called Which Important Characters Never Speak in the Novels. And I didn't remember reading that chapter, so I was like, okay, well, obviously I need to revisit this book. Guys, I did way too much tapping. I really enjoyed this book. I enjoyed not only the character analyses, which was definitely present, but I also enjoyed the insight into Austen's writing style, about how trailblazing she was as an author, the way that she looked at her characters. There are a couple lines in here that supported the view that I have had, that based off of other things I've read, that she wasn't merely putting characters, like people in her life, into her books. These were built out of her imagination. Now, characters who are built from your imagination, they're going to naturally pull aspects of people's personalities, even if you're not intending to. I've had points where I've written and then much later on gone like, oh, okay, I see that that X quality I didn't like in so-and-so has kind of been absorbed and put into this character, or X quality that I really like about so-and-so, I see now that it is in this character. Both of them could be the same both could be put in the same character, but it's not necessarily a conscious thing. That's very different than the one-to-one, I'm taking this person, putting them in my book. There's a point that where the author said, this book says that that Austen, where is it? I was looking for. It's at the end of one of the chapters, When Does Jane Austen Speak Directly? The author is driven to speak by the self-serving reason of her own character. She is struck by Lady Russell's behavior as if she were observing her rather than creating her. The author speaks for the best reason that an author can have, to credit the character with a life all of her own. And this really is something that this book sometimes outright, like with that sentence, but just in other areas it's implied that Austen saw her characters really as having a kind of life of their own, either because of the story she told, of what their lives were past what's put on the page, or in sort of allowing the characters to act and sometimes be feeling like almost surprised by the actions that they chose to take. As if it was the character directing the action versus the author, which is not an uncommon statement to hear, an author say. Christie has said things has said similar things that imply that Poirot had certain aspects to his character that were just, he would not do that because he would feel XYZ about it. That character for Christie, much like Austen's characters for her, had a life unto, in Christie's case, a life unto himself. In Austen's case, life for all of our characters, lives unto themselves. So this was something that was emphasized a couple times in this book. But I really enjoyed the sections on writing style, the sections that emphasize things that I didn't necessarily notice, as well as filling in some gaps. Now, the chapter about what do characters read is a concept that's expanded upon and covered in much more detail in a way that's really helpful and interesting in a book that's called What Jane Austen's Characters Read and Why. And it actually might be, I wanted to see if it's by the same author or not. No, this is John Mullen. But there is another author who wrote a book called What Jane Austen's Characters Read and Why. I read it last year, and it touches on some of that in the chapter in here that's called What Does Jane Austen's Characters Read? And if you find that you enjoyed that chapter in here, I would recommend the other book. I would recommend the other book regardless. That was a very good book. But the topics that are covered are just very interesting in here. It touches on things that you might see in a Jasna journal for like different ideas for themes or whatever. But one is, how much does age matter? It talks about both male and female characters' ages. Do sisters sleep together? What do the characters call each other? And this is something that I believe I've seen in Dr. Octavia Cox's video as well. How do Jane Austen's characters look? Who dies in the course of her novels? Why is it risky to go to the seaside? And that one right there, the last one, it doesn't sound like it would be a deeper topic, but it also, it goes beyond like the obvious things like you might drown. It talks about the societal implications that came with certain seasides and how certain characters saw the seaside and what that might mean to them, more than just it's a beach that if I'm not careful I can drown, Why is the weather important? Weather plays an important part in several of the plots. Do we ever see the lower classes? Which important characters never speak in the novels? Which was actually the main reason why I decided to reread this book, because of Dr. Octavia Cox video on this topic. What games do characters play? Actually, the book, in the pride of the moment, I didn't enjoy the book. I will revisit it later. I just felt like the style was unnecessarily complex. I felt like he could have simplified things a lot. I felt like he was trying to impress his reader. And he succeeded just in being annoying. But the games characters play, that was a topic addressed in that book. And I seem to remember it actually was addressed well in that book, even though you do have to look up things a lot for him, simply because he uses $10 words where 50-cent ones would do just as well. But what do characters say when the heroine is not there? How much money is enough? Why do your plots rely on blunders? What do characters read? I told you about that one. Are ill people really blamed for their illnesses? And that with the hypochondriac characters Austen has, that is a valid question to address how she saw illness. What makes characters blush? What are the right and wrong ways to propose marriage? Apparently writing letters to propose like what was his name? Robert Martin did, was not an odd way to do things. That was like something that was considered acceptable back then, which it feels so odd from a modern lens. Let's see. When does Jane Austen speak directly to the reader? And how experimental a novelist is Jane Austen? Some really great topics in here. Particularly enjoyable if you... I think that does a good job of mixing, getting the kind of information people who are interested in literary criticism, that so it provides stuff for them, but also provides stuff for people who are specifically character oriented. There's enough there to kind of sink your teeth into where it feels like, okay, I get now why a character is written that way. Or, oh, hey, I never noticed that Captain Benwick never actually speaks any words that we see on the page, like actually written there, but Austen writes in such a way that we feel like we've heard Captain Benwick talk. Things like that. So, yes, I do see this as being a book I could reread again. This was already a reread, even if I didn't remember it last time. But, yeah, it's just got a lot to value in here for someone who both enjoys the technical aspect when dealing with literary criticism, but also the character aspect. So this book combines the examination of both quite well. And I think that I would get even more out of it upon a second or third reading. So this will be a reread happily for me. Okay, that was a bit rambly. Hope that you got something out of that. Thank you very much for joining me. Did you manage to get everything you wanted to read in for Jane Austen July? Or did you just kind of give up on Jane Austen July this year? Or did you read just like one thing like I did? What does your Jane Austen July look like? Anyway, thank you for joining me for this video. Hope that you have a blessed day, and I will see you again for the next video. God bless. Bye.